The Crovaxi War Council fell silent as the holographic feed flickered to life. 7 solar cycles of conquest had made them arrogant, but tonight, something had changed in the cold vacuum of space. Their fortress station, deemed impregnable by the galaxy's finest military architects, now drifted as a tomb among the stars. "Show us again," Commander Thexcale growled, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Show us how one human did this." The footage rewound. Genesis moved through the corridors like a phantom draped in flesh. Her blade, a seemingly primitive weapon of folded human steel, sang through the air with surgical precision. Each strike found its mark: the gap between armor plates, the vulnerable joint of an exoskeleton, the exposed nerve cluster beneath a helmet's rim. 23 guards in 47 seconds. Not one swing wasted. Not one drop of her blood spilled. Thomas watched the same footage from the bridge of the UNSC Defiant. His jaw clenched so tight it ached. He'd trained with Genesis for 5 years at the academy. He'd seen her practice for countless hours in the simulation chambers, her movements a meditation, her focus absolute. But this was something beyond training. This was art painted in desperation and fury. "Sir, we're receiving multiple distress signals from Crovaxi installations across the sector," the communications officer reported. They're evacuating." Thomas allowed himself a grim smile. "Good. Let them run." The Crovaxi had made their fatal mistake 6 months ago when they attacked the human colony on New Sarajevo. They'd expected easy prey, soft mammals who'd barely crawled beyond their home system. Instead, they'd awakened something primal in humanity. Not rage, exactly. Something colder. Something patient. Genesis had been there. She'd watched her younger brother die in the bombardment, cradled his broken body while the orbital fires rained down. The Crovaxi commander had broadcast his victory across all channels, his translator rendering his words in mocking human languages. "Let this be a lesson. You are prey. Nothing more." That commander's head now sat in a stasis pod in Genesis's quarters. The War Council's recording continued. Genesis moved deeper into the station, her short black hair matted with alien blood, none of it hers. The Crovaxi had tried everything: energy weapons, kinetic barriers, gas attacks, even sealing entire sections and venting them to space. She'd adapted to each challenge with terrifying efficiency. When they sealed the doors, she cut through them. When they vented the atmosphere, she'd already donned a captured Enviro suit. When they sent their elite blood-sworn warriors, soldiers who'd never known defeat, she dismantled them like training dummies. "How does she move like that?" one of the Crovaxi generals whispered, his translator barely functioning through his fear. "No targeting computer, no enhanced reflexes, no combat stims. Just flesh and steel. Humans call it muscle memory," another replied. 10,000 hours of practice. Their bodies remember what their minds might forget. But it was more than that, Thomas knew. It was will. It was purpose. It was a woman who decided that if the galaxy thought humans were soft, she'd become the knife that proved otherwise. The final sequence of the footage showed Genesis standing in the station's command center. 72 Crovaxi corpses lay between her entry point and where she now stood. Her blade dripped steadily onto the deck plating. She looked directly into the security camera, her dark eyes empty of everything except a simple message: "We are not prey." Then she'd planted the beacon that called in the human fleet and walked back through the carnage she'd created, stepping over bodies as casually as one might navigate furniture. Thomas had been the first through the airlock when they'd docked. He'd found Genesis sitting in the station's mess hall, methodically cleaning her blade with a cloth she'd torn from a Crovaxi banner. She hadn't looked up when he entered. "They're evacuating the entire sector," he'd said softly. "Fleet intelligence says the Crovaxi High Command is recalling all forces from human space. They're calling you Kuthara." He paused. "It means the quiet death in their language." Genesis had finally looked up then, and Thomas had seen something that chilled him more than the bodies outside. Not satisfaction, not vengeance fulfilled, just emptiness where a person used to be. "My brother's name was Marcus," she'd said quietly. "He wanted to be a teacher. He loved music. He'd never hurt anyone." She returned to cleaning her blade. "They should remember his name, not mine." Now, 3 days later, the Crovaxi War Council watched their empire's confidence shatter. Fortress stations could be rebuilt. Fleets could be replenished. But fear, true, bone-deep fear, was impossible to expunge once it took root. One human, Thexcale muttered, his voice barely audible. One human with a primitive blade. His tactical officer leaned forward. Commander, our intelligence suggests that there are over 400 billion humans in their space. If even a fraction of them possess similar silence, Thexcale snapped. But his eyes betrayed his thoughts. They'd poked a sleeping predator and mistaken its patience for weakness. Now that predator was awake, and it remembered every slight, every insult, every drop of human blood spilled. The council chamber's lights flickered as if in sympathy with their crumbling confidence. In the darkness between blinks, each of them saw the same thing. Genesis's empty eyes staring through the camera. Judging. Promising. Waiting. They would retreat. Yes. They would regroup. But late at night, when their ships creaked through the void, they would remember the human woman whose blade never missed. And they would understand, finally, why humanity had survived every predator their own world had thrown at them. Because humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to ensure you never forgot what it cost to make them fight at all. Genesis's blade was clean now, sheathed and silent. But across the Crovaxi Empire, in whispered conversations and fearful glances, her work continued. They dared not speak her name aloud, but they would never forget it. And that, Thomas thought, was exactly the point.